Podcast Answer Man, episode number 113. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft. Today, I am going to be taking a couple questions that have been emailed in and sitting in the folder for the Podcast Answer Man for a while. We're going to talk about business cards, the look of your website, choosing the right domain names, equipment feedback, and more. That's right, folks. We're going to start things off right where they should be, and that is answering questions here on the Podcast Answer Man podcast. And so the first question today comes from our friend Matt out there, and he says, today I was listening in the car to some Podcast Answer Man episodes, and I had a few questions of my own. The first question is, what do people look for in a business card? Should there be a lot of graphics or just a logo and a solid color? His second question has to do with websites. You know, should he have a banner at the top, and should he have a logo, and should the text kind of just jump out at you? And I guess what he wants here is just a little bit of a design look and feel. What kind of grabs people, and how important are these elements? And this is something that some podcasters don't ask themselves, and this is something I wish they really would consider a little bit more, especially when you consider going into iTunes and doing a search for a podcast. In fact, I'm just going to encourage you just to open up iTunes real quick. Even if you yourself as a podcast listener do not listen using or do not subscribe to podcasts using iTunes, I really suggest that you go and download iTunes and see how your podcast is looking in that directory. And I will tell you, go ahead and go to the iTunes store and do a search for Financial Podcast, and then click See All under the podcast section, and take a look at the different ways that those podcasts look. And I'm not doing it here right now. I've just done this enough with my clients to be able to tell you there are some podcasts, you know, that just with the album artwork alone, you're going to make some kind of judgment on what that content probably is like. And for those of us who are subscribed to a lot of podcasts, we know that there's some really good stuff out there, and there's some not so good stuff out there. And I'm of the opinion, and this may or may not be true. In fact, it probably has no correlation whatsoever. However, in my mind, when I go to iTunes, and first of all, if I don't see any album artwork altogether, all I see is the little default iTunes logo for a podcast, well, then I automatically judge that content as being something that's probably very unprofessional, very unpolished, and actually sounds like somebody in their bedroom with the fan on in the background and just, you know, rambling on and on, which for you, maybe that's your favorite kind of podcast, and that's cool. But, you know, when it comes to financial podcasts, that, you know, I'm looking for something a little bit more professional. And so therefore, yeah, basically you want to have something you want to have at least some artwork up there. Now, the thing is, though, is there are some, if you go through this search, there are going to be some people who have some artwork where, you know what, probably the iTunes default logo would have been better. And if that says anything, I already told you what the iTunes default logo communicates to me, even though it's not always true, because I've actually sat down with a client and says, take a look at these. What do you think this podcast sounds like? Just by looking at the visual element of their artwork and the name of their show and stuff like that. Well, gosh, I bet that sounds awful. And I play it, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, that sounds really good. This guy knows what he's doing. This guy needs a little bit of a iTunes makeover. You know, he needs a new 300 by 300 album artwork image, and probably needs to consider changing the name of his podcast. You know, I think it might do him a little justice. And there are some out there, and I said, what do you think, you know, would you listen to this podcast? And we're looking at the album artwork, and boy, does it look sharp. I mean, it looks like this guy right here, this must be some kind of Fortune 500 company putting out, like a professional program, and we double click on it and we listen and preview one of the episodes, and by golly, it sounds like crap, and it's something we would never listen to. But we clicked on it and we at least gave it a try based upon the fact that it had awesome looking album artwork. And so the look of your logo, your design, your podcast, it is the first impression. And this is something that I try to tell people, my clients all the time. Is like, listen, we can get you some awesome sound. That is not a problem. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate that today for the 3 a.m. Ministries podcast. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to share this with you. But anyway, we can get you some awesome sound, but having some album artwork and having a logo, you don't have to have a logo, but just an album artwork. If you go into the iTunes Music Store, let me give you some examples that I'm pretty proud of. If you go to iTunes Music Store and do a search for Almost Daily Devotional, that's it. Those 3 words, Almost Daily Devotional. And when you look at that artwork, you'll see that it's got a clean, very fresh looking setting, and it's even an image that even evokes peace and calmness. And it's a very clean, uncluttered desktop table with an open Bible laid out on top of it. And that's it. It's very clean, but it's the Almost Daily Devotional. If you go to Family from the Heart, go do a search for Family from the Heart. And when you go there, you're going to see an image of a photo album. And in the photo album, it's kind of got a sepia tone to it. Again, very common feeling. It evokes a little bit of an emotion, and you see that the front has an image on it, and it has a heart on it. So, Family from the Heart. So basically, when people are searching for these pieces of content, you're up against lots and lots of other shows. And most of the time, it starts out with a graphical, logo-driven, or not logo-driven, but artwork-driven search of your podcast. Sure, the name of your podcast is associated to your artwork, and it's over there to the right or right below it, depending on what search result you're looking at. But it's still, your eye gravitates to the graphics. So with that being said, I think it's important to spend a little bit of time. And in fact, here's the deal. If you're on a tight budget, if you're on an extremely tight budget and you're getting by on very inexpensive equipment, and it can be done. Let me tell you, I started out podcasting in December of 2005, and I started out with a $25 headset microphone from Best Buy. And I was on a tight budget. There's no doubt about it. And I made my own artwork, and it was ugly as all get out. And I'll tell you that I knew it was ugly when all of a sudden my listeners started seeing it. And it's like, hey, I'm a graphic artist, and I'd love to produce this artwork for you. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And so see if you can get a friend that will do this for you. Now, here's the deal. If you're spending a lot of money on equipment, I mean, let's just say you're spending more than $300 or $400 on audio equipment. Why not spend $80 and have somebody design for you a 300 by 300 artwork piece of logo? If you're interested in something like that, I could probably help you out. If not, and you want something a little bit beyond my graphical abilities, I have lots of people to connect with that I can forward you on to. But I feel like it's that important to really just invest. It's a one-time investment, and it's something that's going to represent you and carry you throughout, the look and feel of your site from that point forward. So once you have in my opinion, that's the first place you start, is your 300 by 300 album artwork. Now, I'm going to go, Matt, to your second question, and then take you back to the website. Okay? I'm going to take you back to the website. The website is also very important that it looks decent. Now, you don't have to spend a ton of money on a website. I feel like a website needs to be a couple things, especially for a podcast. especially for a podcast. I think it needs to represent a couple words: clean, organized, and simple. Clean, organized, and simple. And I will tell you that I sometimes push the borderline on the simple part. Now, my stuff is very organized. There's no question about the organization. My stuff is pretty simple, pretty clean, except for sometimes I lose out on the simpleness. Like, for example, if you go to podcastanswerman.com, you'll see that my sidebar just seems to be cluttered with so much stuff. But it's still simple. It's still easy to understand. There's not like stuff happening over here on the left, blinking and spinning and all that stuff. And then over on the right, you got more things over there that kind of offset distract you from reading what's most important, which is the content, the show notes and stuff like that. And as far as how to navigate through the site, how to get to older episodes, those kind of things should be very easy. For example, your website, imagine this is what your website is. It is the archive. It is the place to go back and find information that, for example, I'm recording episode number 113. If I were to refer to you guys and say, hey guys, you want to listen to episode number 17 of Podcast Answer Man? And here's how you get there. Go to podcastanswerman.com and do this. And people should be able to follow that process pretty simply. Now, one of the things that I did for organization purposes is that if you notice on all of my podcast episode headings, I do a 3-digit number, the name of the podcast, which is Podcast Answer Man, and then I do hyphen the name of the episode. So for me to find episode 13, now I'm going to try it here and watch me. Hopefully I don't fail. I'm in the search box on the top right-hand corner. If I do 013, then space podcast space answer space man, I'm just going to hit search and boom, it right there. Oh my goodness, no way. It's episode 13 and the title of that episode, and I swear I did not do this, but it says it's episode 13, the look of your audio podcast. That is hilarious. But anyway, it's the same deal. You need to probably consider the look of your podcast, the organization of your podcast. How easy do you make it for people to find content when you tell them to go back to the episode and go look up this show, and the notes are there. Make sure it's clean, make sure it's simple, but also make sure it looks good. I mean, it doesn't have to, you don't have to spend a lot of money on graphics and logos, although some of those things can kind of make it pop. In fact, look, Podcast Answer Man, I've not done anything to really change the top header of my site. That's because I spend so much time working on client sites. But if you look at it, it's just podcast in orange, and then Answer Man in blue. That's it. Podcast Answer Man. It's pretty plain, pretty simple, but it's to the point, easy to read. But there are other graphical elements that do make my site pop a little bit, and that is the little. If you go to any of the show notes recently, you'll see the little rectangle with rounded corners with my comic image and the Podcast Answer Man logo and everything. So there you go. I mean, you do see a little bit of that. And as far as my comic image, people ask me quite often, where did you get that done? And that's over at geekculture.com. And then you want to click to, when you get there, you go through the link to go to the portraits by Nitrozac. And digital portraits by Nitrozac, they start at $195. But that's quite expensive. However, relatively for many people. And to be honest with you, with the budget that I started this business on, and I got this done when I first launched my business. And quite honestly, it's because I wanted to create some business cards. And so I went to Nitrozac, and the reason I went to them is because that's the people who did This Week in Tech and Callie Lewis and some other folks out there that have these comic images, and it's like, those look quality. They look professional. And for me, I wanted something that looked professional. And so that I paid the money for it. And sure, it's a couple $100 to have something. And that was just the image. That doesn't include the design of the business card or anything like that. That's just that image. But it's there for many things. In fact, if you go to podcastanswerman.com, you'll see that it's I shrunk it down to a little favicon. So that it's the little 16 by 16 pixel square up in your browser. It's also my avatar on Twitter and almost every other social networking site out there that I'm on, and I use it throughout. So, and of course, even on the album artwork of this podcast, you'll see it. But yeah, I believe in representing, at least communicating through your website and through your artwork that, you know what, this content that I'm creating, I think it's important enough for me to even invest in the look and the aesthetics of it, so that you are, so that it's appealing to you, and that it's not painful to look at. And that's really the way I think about that. And I've had a lot of great comments. Now, I'm getting ready probably this week to relaunch a new design of GSPN.TV. Now, GSPN.TV will be entering its fifth revision of its website, and the reason for that is because I'm consistently changing, what I think is simple and how I want to navigate, how I want people to navigate through the content that I have, and I'm constantly thinking, how can I make this more clean? How can I make this more simple? How can I make this more organized? And how can I communicate who we are, what we're doing, and how can we have that professional look and feel? And so those are things that are very important. Now, Matt, I happen to know that you're a younger guy and you're out there, and so the budget's limited. But I even believe with your ability, and if I'm not mistaken, is that you that's doing the photography? I can't remember. But anyway, play around with it. And the one thing I will tell you is that I remember when I did the second or the third revision of GSPN.TV. And I remember right after I finished completing the site, I'm like, wow, this looks beautiful. And if I were to look at it today, I look and I say, oh my gosh, does that look horrible? Here's the deal. Your site can be ever evolving. And just like my podcasting, my sound of my podcast, I started out with a $25 microphone. I then upgraded to a very inexpensive mixer and an inexpensive XLR microphone. So it was a slow process. It was a slow build. You don't have to have hit everything out of the park first time around. But it is important, I believe, to definitely have something that looks good. Now, as far as what do people look for in a business card, that's a very difficult question for me to answer. Being in sales, I will tell you that I used to give out a lot of business cards, and I used to get a lot of business cards, doing a lot of face-to-face networking with people. And I will tell you, I have been getting business cards from overnightprints.com, and I just went to their site while I was preparing for here, and I found out that they have an affiliate program. And so I signed up for an affiliate program with them, hoping that I'll get approved pretty quickly. Don't worry about it. If you want to go over there and you need to get some business cards right away, go ahead. But eventually, I'll have that affiliate program set up. And but I've been using them forever, and they have the most awesome business cards. They have a very thick card stock. And believe it or not, the thickness of your card really makes a difference. Even forget about the design for just a second. Just the feel of one of my business cards compared to about 95% of all other business cards, yeah, it's huge. It's a difference. And so it's a very thick card stock. Not only that, but I really enjoy full color business cards and full bleed. That means that you have like a background image, and these are my personal preferences, but a full bleed background image that kind of takes up the entire card and your information, and it's the same thing. It kind of information that has a little pop to it. have a little graphic on there, whether it be a logo or whatever, but have it be something that looks professional, looks very high quality. In fact, a great place to go is iStockPhoto.com. The letter I, and then stockphoto.com. And I have an account there, and I'm always looking to help clients design some things. And so that's where I go to grab some stuff. In fact, head over to pursuingabalancedlife.com and look at my balanced rocks. I've gotten so many compliments on that. And that was an image that I got over there at iStockPhoto.com. But yeah, so basically business cards, I like to have something that's a very graphical in nature that communicates the essence of what your card represents, whether that be insurance, whether that be podcasting, whether that be, home furnishings. I like to have some graphics to go along with it. I like my card to look so good, to look so of such high quality that people actually feel bad if they throw it away. That's what I want them to feel. I want them to feel bad for throwing it away. And there are some cards that are just a little text here and a little text there and whatever. But it's easy for me to just toss that in the trash. But even as people are cleaning out their wallets or their pockets and they're tossing things in the trash, I'll tell you, it's the ones that have a really catchy, something or other to it that at least before I toss it in the trash, I look at it again. And you may think that's unimportant. It's like, well, gosh, Cliff, you still throw it in the garbage can. Well, the truth is that that person's face or that person's name, that person's business name, something stuck there. And when I'm going down the road and somebody needs internet marketing expertise, it's like, oh, what was that one with the Target on it? Oh, yeah, that was like Target Research and Marketing, or whatever. I'm just making this up, but yeah, that's how it works. And it's like, oh, Podcast Answer Man. I remember that card, and it's like, oh, that guy, I see his comic image. I see him on Twitter all the time. Let me go over to Twitter, and I'm sure he's got a Twitter message out. That's him, Cliff, GSPN on Twitter. And so yeah, it catches, and so yeah, that's how I feel about that. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question. And the next question comes from Tess. She says, hey, Cliff, I realize I've already had my hour of consulting with you, but I figured maybe you would take pity on me and share your opinion on this question. I know you love marketing and community-based aspects of podcasting. Let's see here. I have been thinking a lot about how I can best encompass what it is that I want to podcast about. Initially, I wanted to podcast about the powerswitch.org.uk community, which is focused on the end of cheap energy and renewables and eco-living and so on. So I was going to set up the Power Switch podcast. Then I realized that this was too narrow and wouldn't interest those who knew nothing about the energy industry, but were more focused on environmentalism or social justice or even growing fruits and vegetables and keeping chickens. And I want to talk about all of these people. Eventually, I figured out that ultimately what I'm most interested in is a sustainable lifestyle with minimal uninteresting work for hire. Let's see here. I'm in the middle of a big downshifting experiment, and everything else is viewed on the light side of that goal. No, everything else is viewed in the light of that goal. So I figured I should primarily podcast about downshifting. This is an audience I'm most interested in and sharing my experience with and learning from. Everything else really comes under that umbrella. That's why that's the whys, whats, and the hows. The question then becomes what podcast name and what domain name. I could get downshiftpodcast.com, but is it bad to have podcast in the domain? Does that cheapen the site? Does the blog on the site would be centered around the podcast, but should I lock myself into the word podcast in the site? I could use downshiftproject.com instead. How do you feel about hyphens like downshift-project? .com, for example. I've also been considering something slightly more obtuse like downcurve.com, which speaks to the overlap of my downshifting lifestyle and the wide economic downturn that has a slightly snappier, funkier feel. What's your gut feeling about what works and what doesn't? I would love to make this voice feedback, but I don't want people sneaking off to register my domains. All right, so absolutely. A couple things. First of all, does the word podcast cheapen your site's domain? Well, my feeling on this is that you don't need to use the word podcast in your domain. Although I have several domains that do have podcast in it. Like, for example, go to fulltimemompodcast.com. And the only reason we put podcast in that domain name is because somebody else already had fulltimemom.com. And matter of fact, I forget who has that. Let's see here. If I go to fulltimemom.com, it goes to one of those places that, they hold on to these things. It doesn't look like anything's there about us. If you have a mission, place it here. Yeah, so basically it's just somebody who's holding that domain. So I figured if somebody accidentally goes to fulltimemom.com, they're going to clearly find out very quickly, based upon the content of Stephanie and Sarah's show, that that's not the site. And they make it a point to say fulltimemompodcast.com each time. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it cheapens her brand to have that there. There are some places where I think it's actually quite helpful to have podcast in it. Now, for example, Grey's Anatomy Podcast.com, Desperate Housewives Podcast.com, Heroes Fan Podcast.com. Those are very clear and to the point. And when people go in and they type in, I haven't done this, but let me just try this. Grey's Anatomy Podcast, and let me just hit search there, and it doesn't look like we show up. And oh yeah, we are. I'm actually the third in the list. So there's the official one from Grey's from the abc.com, and then there's another one that lists to the official, and then the third one is Generally Speaking Production Network, Grey's Anatomy podcast. And you'll notice that it actually shows up under gspn.tv/category/entertainment/GAFP, which is basically, I just purchased that domain and had it forward to that category where it lists all those episodes. So so there are times when I think putting podcast in the title is very useful. Now, in Tess's scenario here, I don't think podcast would serve her well, because downshifting, this idea, and of course it was the first time I had ever heard of downshifting, but I did a search for this when she sent me the email. It's like, yeah, downshifting is something. There's a community of people out there who, and it's basically an idea of living more simply and being a little bit more self-sufficient, not completely and totally, but being more self-sufficient, not having to, starting to grow your own vegetables and using less energy and trying to just take it easier. And so downshifting is definitely something that's out there. Now, podcast is not something people typically are going to be looking for when they think about downshifting, but downshiftpodcast.com. The thing is her blog, she says, is going to be centered around her podcast, but her blog could end up becoming a place and a resource of its own, and that the podcast actually feeds into the blog. So yeah, the idea of locking into that domain name, when you say downshiftpodcast.com, I would think of that in my mind as a site that is specifically going to be devoted to show notes of the podcast. Whereas if you went with downshiftproject.com, then what would happen in essence is it's like downshiftproject.com. That sounds like the name of a great resourceful blog on downshifting. And the fact that you have the Downshift Project podcast, it still fits. And so I really like that. Now, how do I feel about hyphens? Here's the deal. I'm not a huge fan of hyphens, although Google is for Google ranking. So if somebody else had downshiftproject.com and you wanted to do downshift-project.com, then that would work and it will help you in your Google rankings. However, first things first, you may have a trademark or a copyright issue if somebody else is already using Downshift Project. And if somebody's holding that name as a domain like Full-Time Mom, but it's not being used for any kind of special site or organization, then it may not be that big of a deal. But the thing is the problem I have with hyphens is that, I do this all the time. I listen to a podcast called Pray As You Go. All right. And let me just see if I can even remember it. Pray as you-go.com. Let me see if that's it. And that's it. Yeah. Pray as you-go. And it actually takes you to it forwards you to .org. All right. Or it forwards you to a page that says go to the pray as you-go.org. Let me tell you, I want to promote that little devotional podcast more than I do, but it's too darn hard. It's too darn hard. So let me just go to prayasyougo.org. Let me see what that does. Well, the thing is they actually they own prayasyougo.org, and they forward it to pray as you. Now, at least I know this now. prayasyougo.com. Let's try that one. Okay, there's nothing there. prayasyougo.com. Yeah, definitely nothing there. So prayasyougo.org. That is excellent. Now because this is a perfect example. Because I know that I can actually say, "Hey guys, I was listening to this devotional today over at prayasyougo.org." And it's going to be huge. It's going to be so different for me. But yeah, the hyphens is just a little much. Go to full-time-mom.com. If that, I definitely went. It was much easier. Go to fulltimemompodcast.com. And it used to be a long time ago that everybody wanted small domains. And this could be important, I guess, if you had a business. You're looking to put it on a business card. But no, my feeling is don't go for the short domain names. Go for the domain names that are memorable. Grey's Anatomy podcast.com. That's not short. Desperate Housewives podcast.com. Not short at all. Those are long domain names, but they're memorable and they're easy to type in off the top of your head. And so podcastanswerman.com, gspn.tv. We have helpigotamac.com. The name of our show, Help I Got a Mac, helpigotamac.com. It's long, but it's easy to remember and it's easy to type in. And I would never do help-I-got-a-mac.com. It definitely wears me out just to even think about it. All right, so with that, thank you, Tess, for your question. And by the way, congratulations on your podcast. I know that it's been a couple months since you put an episode out there, but I want you to know that I am subscribed to it. And just so people have a feel for the Downshift and she, by the way, this came in from a long time ago, and I waited until after she got everything all squared away before bringing this up. But anyway, here it is. This is episode 2 of the Downshift Project podcast.
The Downshift Project, Our Land. Welcome to the Downshift Project. In this edition, which will be very brief, I'll just be giving you a brief introduction to what our land looks like and really what we've got to play with around here. We have a curious half-acre of land to work with here at Limpets Folly. The house is a small wooden bungalow at the bottom of a steep south-facing hill. Managed sycamore, oak and ash woodland lies to the west, while our neighbours have a similar property also bounded by woodland. Neither of us are complete newbies at the veg-growing lark, though Dave has more experience than I do due to his mother having trained as a horticulturalist in her youth. She still grows the vast majority of her own fruit and veg needs in a garden far smaller than ours. Personally, until spring 2008, I hadn't even touched a seedling since I was a child. Still, it can be quite addictive watching a plant grow from the tiniest seed into something bearing edibles. For a city girl, that first homegrown radish can be quite an emotional experience.
All right, so there you go. Folks, check it out over at downshiftproject.com. And Tess, you're doing a great job. I hope to hear some more from you. And you've inspired me. Stephanie and I have started planting our own what did you say, veggies? Vegetables out on the back deck. We got some planters and they're growing. And you're right, it is quite addictive to watch those little things grow. And I'm looking forward to using those as quickly as possible so we can have some fresh tomatoes or are they tomatoes in the UK. But anyway, check it out. That's a great podcast. Next up, I want to say thank you to those of you who attended the webinar this past weekend. We had so much fun, and looking forward to seeing what comes out of the podcast that come out of those who attended. And if you guys want to call in and leave feedback about your feelings and experiences with the webinar and kind of promote what kind of project you're working on, I'd be happy to play that here in the next show or two. And so looking forward to hearing from those guys. But anyway, the webinar was a huge success, and I am working on scheduling the next one. In fact, what I hope to do with this is, instead of me just arbitrarily picking a date, the first person who picks a day and a time that will work on my schedule to do a webinar, that's the day and time that we'll schedule it. And the only thing is I require at least 2 weeks out so that I have plenty of time to advertise that to the mailing list and also here in the podcast so that we can get as many people to join as possible. But it was a great podcast, or a webinar, I'm sorry, talking about how to set up all the equipment that I'm using, how I have it all set up, and the process I go for recording a live show, and the workflow that I do, and how I'm able to really go through and produce as many podcasts as I do. So anyway, thank you once again to those of you who attended. It was a blast. And for those who attended, they actually got an extra free hour after the 2 hours was up. I made sure I knew ahead of time if anybody was on a time constraint. So we went 3 hours instead of just 2, and very, very valuable time. And so I'm thankful for that. Next up, I have some feedback from Evan, a great friend of mine over there at the Lost Mystery Podcast? Let me just look this one up here on Google. Lost Mystery Podcast. And yes, lostmysterypodcast.com. And so there you go. And of course, he uses podcast in the title of a show. But obviously, his show is, everything is for that site is centered around the podcast. So very clear there. All right. But anyway, Evan recently purchased an Edirol R-09HR from me. And of course, we're selling lots of these here. But I want to let you know, most of the time, the feedback comes in email form. But this came back in audio form. Now, with full disclosure, Evan did send me an email telling me exactly how excited he was. But Evan and I are close enough friends that I said, hey, would you mind sending in any kind of audio review or your feelings and initial thoughts on the Edirol that I could play in the show? And he said, sure, and I'm about ready to play that for you. Actually, let me just go ahead and play that for you, and then I'll say what I'm going to say. So here's Evan and his thoughts on the Edirol recorder.
Hey Cliff, Evan here. I just wanted to record a quick message and let you know how much I am thoroughly enjoying the Edirol R09. Your recommendation was spot on. Like I said, I was planning to get a field recorder for Comic-Con so I could do some on-location recordings of panels and podcast episodes and that sort of thing. And I wanted something that would really capture the feeling of being there. And this thing will definitely do it. I cannot wait. But what's most amazing to me is how capable it is of using, for working in other applications as well. You can, of course, record ambient noise and get the feeling of being on a location, but it's also great for more directional work where you don't want to pick up everything in the room and you only want to pick up a single source, like what I'm doing right now, recording my voice, going into it, and trying to ignore a lot of the background noise. This thing is incredible. I was not expecting it to have all of the different settings that are so easy to change. There's a series of switches on the back that are so easy to adjust that you can really dial in any number of settings for any application that you have. So I just wanted to thank you so much for the recommendation, and I cannot wait to find more ways to use this amazing piece of equipment. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, so did you hear the enthusiasm in his voice regarding this piece of equipment? I want to tell you that enthusiasm comes through all the feedback that I get from every single person who's ever bought an Edirol R-09HR recorder. I am not exaggerating when I tell you that. Now, with that being said, when I sell one of the less expensive units, those people are usually somewhat satisfied. And I've shared this before. The Edirol recorder is not cheap. I mean, it's a couple $100. It's about $399, and so it's not on the cheap end. And it's one of those things that, if you're on a very tight budget, it's one of those things you save for a long time for. And trust me, I saved for a very long time before I could afford to pick one of these up. And anyway, it's something that once you get it, you fall in love with it, and you think, how could I have ever lived without it? And that is exactly the way that everybody responds. With what you just heard in audio form, I get that in email form from anybody who's ever purchased one of these from me. Now, with that being said, for $200 less, people have purchased things like the Zoom H2 recorder and now the Tascam DR07. And I want to tell you that those people they're not completely destroyed or distraught by the purchase. I mean, the fact is they're saving $200, which is significant. So it's $200 instead of $400, and that is a substantial savings. And I will tell you, both the Zoom H2 and the Tascam DR07 will both record some pretty decent audio. And I'm not a fan of the Zoom H2 due to the menuing system. It is absolutely lousy. The power switch on the Zoom H2 is lousy. But the sound quality of the Zoom H2 is amazing, and the microphones are really great. So but the thing is each of these these $200 recorders that I'm mentioning here, each of them have their own strengths and plenty of weaknesses. But in my opinion, it's that Edirol R-09HR that is the complete package. I mean, it's the one thing. And I want to give you an update. Last week, I shared with you some feedback from Chris Oatley, who shared that he got his DR07 and we talked about how excited he was to get it. I gave you some full disclosure in the last episode that he actually received a Tascam DR07 that had a defect in it. It was actually recording some static in the line. And I wanted to follow up with you and let you know that he has since received a brand new Tascam DR07, and I shipped that right out to him, even without having the old one shipped back yet. Once I got the RMA number from my supplier, the return authorization and everything, basically I gave him the account so that he could ship it back for free via UPS to my supplier. And what happens in that scenario is I actually end up paying or it goes onto my account for the entire cost of that unit. And then when he returns it, once they receive it, then I get a credit back on my account. But that's, this is how I do business. And the fact is when you're dealing with electronics equipment, it's possible that you get a dead unit or a defective unit or something like that. Of course, in the last year and a half, this is only the second time that anything's ever had to be returned. So I've had a huge track record, and I'm probably making anywhere between 5 to 9 equipment sales per week, and those are usually pretty sizable. So doing a lot of equipment, and hardly any time we have a problem. Now, I asked him, I said, hey, Chris, I want to thank you for your speedy return of the original equipment, for getting it out there. I haven't confirmed that it got back yet, but I do know that he had sent it. And I said, I'd love to ask you, just want to make sure you're completely satisfied with the Tascam, and wanted to know how it's working out for you, the new one. And he wrote back, and he says something that I hear all the time. Well, not all the time. That right there, that was almost an exaggeration. About 6 out of 10 times, I get this phrase, the word, until I can upgrade. Until I can upgrade. And so what happens is a lot of people, I would say about 6 out of 10 people who buy the Zoom H2 or the and actually 100% of the time of the Tascam, because he's the first one who's bought the Tascam that I reviewed back in episode 100 and 101. Anyway, a lot of people will buy these units, use them for a while, and once they have enough money, they'll buy the Edirol and put the other one up on eBay. It happens a lot. And he says, yeah, Cliff, it's pretty cool. This is talking about the Tascam DR7. He says, something I've been reminded of is what my parents always told me about buying musical instruments and recording gear. In those situations, you always get what you pay for. Part of me wishes I had held out for the Edirol, but this one will hold me over until I can upgrade. The benefits, though, far outweigh the complaints. I mean, it's everything I hoped for as far as ease of use, which is extremely important, and the Tascam will provide. Mobility, absolutely. It's a small portable unit. And how it unlocks my spontaneous inspiration, etc. I look forward to recording the Lost panel in San Diego at Comic-Con. I can't wait. And so it's so funny because Evan over at the Lost Mystery Podcast is going to be going to Comic-Con and recording the Lost panel. And so is Chris from his writing podcast. And so that's going to be extremely exciting to know that these guys are going to be there, both of them from the GSPN.TV and Podcast Answer Man communities. And hopefully Chris and Evan, you guys will be able to hook up and at least say hello. And he says, I love all the compression options, and the built-in mics are really good. Thanks for all your help with this, Chris. And so very happy to have a satisfied customer there. Now, this is the part of the show where I'm going to share with you a before and after. And this goes to show you the difference between audio, buying audio gear. And I'm also going to play this. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm going to have to probably take off my headphones because my head's going to explode. And it did when I first heard this. I was like, oh my gosh, no way. You'll get to hear what I'm talking about in just 1 second. Let me go ahead. This first of all, I'm going to tell you this is from 3amministries.org, and this is from James and Bill, and they have this podcast called Revelation and Truth. And well, first of all, I'm going to give you a little bit of they recently purchased a good deal of equipment from me, and we got all that sent out to them, and they did a complete relaunch of their podcast. And during the first 7 or 8 minutes of their relaunch episode, they went on and on and on about me and about the equipment and stuff like that. But before I play for you that bit, let me play 37 seconds worth of an episode that was before they got their equipment from me. So this is what they sounded like right here.
I tried running once. I did.
He said once, folks. Once.
People talk about the runner's high.
It's there.
No, I got a hold of some bad stuff because all I got was caked and salty. It was disgusting.
No, I'll tell you something. That's good. But the more you run, the harder it is to salt over because your pores stay clean after you've run. So you have to run a lot.
Oh, is that what it is?
And then you start getting the access to the endorphins because at first you just build up lactic acid and it blocks all of that stuff. I tell you what, there is a runner's high. I think that's the natural opiates that God gave us. That's just my opinion.
All right, so there you go. That is that is one of their prior episodes, and that's what their audio sounded like, which wasn't horrible. I mean, it really wasn't. Obviously, they're doing quite a bit of a compression on there, but they're doing compression on some mics that, you know, they could have been improved upon. So here's what they sound like now, and I'm going to play this for those of you who want to go get a sandwich, and that'll become evident here in just a minute where the inside joke is on that. Here's a 6 minute and 26 second clip from their show, their relaunch episode. And this is just, I do want to let you know, full disclosure, I did edit this down just a little bit. So here you go.
We're not Christian radio. We're Christians on the radio.
Completely different intro this time, Bill.
It does sound. We don't have anything like hot coming in.
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Right.
All right, so today is the official relaunch of Revelation and Truth. Cool stuff. I'm loving it.
I still like the intro.
I'm digging the music.
Still love the intro.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I'm loving that intro,
That's
man.
great.
It's cool stuff.
That's great.
For people who have been faithfully listening to us and people who go into iTunes and get our back catalog, you're probably going to hear a difference.
Big difference.
In our sound today because we decided that this was working and we went ahead and we purchased some equipment. I want to give some credit. I want to give some honor to someone who has been an inspiration to me because of what's been happening in his life. I'm going to tell his story a little bit, but you can go and check out his podcast and hear more about
it's phenomenal.
The stuff from the horse's mouth. But there's a man named Cliff Ravenscraft who runs GSPN.TV. He's a podcasting and new media consultant, and he sells equipment. Now, I've been listening to his shows since the first show I listened to was his weekly Lost podcast. Yes, I'm a Lost fan. If you don't like it, I couldn't care less.
I hate it for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. I know it, and I'm proud of it. So I'm listening to that show, and he has these other shows. He has a great show called About the Church.
Wait a minute, man. I don't think I could recite those numbers as quickly as you just did. That's scary. I love the show Lost, but that's kind of, anyway, well, go ahead.
They're ingrained on me. Cliff has this great show called About the Church, and it was the second show that I started listening to with him, and on their official relaunch, they were asking for callers, and I called in. I left this ridiculously long message. And
not you, James. Not you.
He and his co-host said, we're going to play this call from James. We're going to go get a sandwich while he talks. And that's kind of how I connected with him. And then when we started doing this, Bill, my first thought was, okay, we'll do the radio thing because we had openings for radio.
Sure.
But let's do podcasting as well, because the great thing about podcasting is it's personal, it's on demand. You can listen to it when you want to listen to it.
Absolutely.
Oh, I missed the show at 12. Man, just download the podcast. You're good to go. So I called Cliff Ravenscraft. And first of all, it was the strangest thing because I'm calling Cliff Ravenscraft that I've been listening to him for a year. He's kind of, he's one of my heroes. He left, I think he was in life insurance with a family business, and I think it was his dad's business, for 15 years, making a ton of money, just doing great things, and he really feels God calling him into podcasting and new media as a ministry. And so he went ahead and bit the bullet and did it. He said, Dad, I got to go do this thing. And he did it. And so now he sells equipment and he consults with podcasting and that kind of thing, helps people set up podcasts of their own and that kind of stuff.
Because I want to jump in here and say this. Anybody can put something on the internet.
That's true.
And anybody can jump in there and it's real easy to do. Mm-hmm. But to make it sound good, to make it sound professional and enjoyable, that's a whole different category.
That's true.
To itself.
So I called up Cliff Ravenscraft. You were there with me when I first made the call.
I was there.
We were it was the second part of our business meeting. We had gone to get some lunch. And I said, well, let me just call him up because we'll see about making this order. And I called and left a voicemail. He called back a few minutes later. And I remember you made fun of me, Bill.
Yes, I did because you were hero worshiping.
I was hero worshiping just a little bit.
Cliff called me.
Oh my gosh! Cliff Ravenscraft is on my phone. And I gotta tell you, just to tell you part of the story that you don't know, a few days ago, he calls me up and I'm looking at my phone. Oh, it's Cliff. And I answer, hey Cliff, hey James, my friend, how you doing? And I was like, a little part of me just went, oh my God, Cliff Ravenscraft said, James, my friend, how you doing? Oh my God, it was so great. Okay, so here's what happened. Here's why I want to mention this, because we placed the order, and Cliff just went so far above and beyond. I mean, it was, I said, Cliff, let me tell you exactly what I'm doing and what I think we need. And I explained it, and he said, well, you could do this, and he went over these whole things. And there were a couple of options, and he wasn't sure which way to go. So one day he calls me, and he says, hey, are you near an internet connection? I said, yeah. He says, go to my website and look at my live video feed. And he walks me through his studio, Bill. He's showing me all these things. I'm like, who would do this?
Exactly.
For you.
Exactly.
As a customer, I'm not going to call up any of the, I almost said the name of some stores.
I can't go into my local guitar store.
Yeah.
My local guitar store.
Or my local music center.
Yes. and get that kind of service.
Yeah, man, you can get those if you like. They're pretty good.
Yeah, sure. The teenager going through puberty behind the background, popping a zit in the mirror, going, yeah, dude, it sounds good, man. Thank you.
So I want to give some honor to Cliff Ravenscraft over at GSPN.TV, because he just went overboard and has not stopped being a good contact for me on these issues. But beyond that, he's really becoming my friend, and I'm loving him even more than I was before, which was a lot.
He's also a friend of 3 a.m. Ministries, and we appreciate him for that.
Yes. So that's our stuff on Cliff, and just again, we're loving you.
All right, so there you go, James and Bill. Thank you so much, man. My head is huge. I don't know how I'm going to get out the door of my studio here, but anyway, folks, I tell you, what an honor, and it feels good to do what you're called to do for a living, and to do things according to a purpose, and that's what I've been podcasting about the last 2 episodes prior to this. We're podcasting with a purpose, and it's great to see some examples of this. You've got now both of these clips that I played, both from the before and the after of James and Bill's Revelation and Truth. Both of those were clips that didn't really get into the meat of their kind of content, but those are 2 men who are podcasting with a purpose. Not only that, but we had Tess, who also is podcasting with a purpose. She's sharing her passion for living more simply. And have you discovered what your purpose is, what your passion is? You've got a voice, and this podcasting is an excellent way to let your voice be heard. Folks, thank you for listening to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. I look forward to hearing more of your questions, your feedback. The best way to get in touch with us, you can call us directly at area code 859-795-4067. Again, that's 859-795-4067. Or if you don't have unlimited long distance, you can call us toll free at 1-800-757-1158. That's 1-800-757-1158. I want to hear from you guys. Call in your questions. And again, if you want to be the person who sets the time and date of the next webinar for equipment and workflow, please email me, feedback@gspn.tv, feedback@gspn.tv. The first person who has a date that matches up with an available date on my calendar, that will be the day and time of the next webinar. Anyway, I'm already at an hour now, so I will let you guys go. I'll be back again next week. And, of course, if you need any audio equipment, if you would like some consulting one-on-one, if you need some help with redesign of your website, whatever the case may be, anything related to podcasting, of course, you can give me a call directly. And, yes, you can call my cell phone, 859-757-1399, and that is for direct business only, but it is my cell phone. Call me at 859 888-757-1399. We'll talk to you soon. God bless. I'll be back next week.